Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Bay Area Content Marketing Meetup, where we are in I guess we had our 10-year anniversary. We're in year 11, I guess. Today, we've invited two-time speaker, now three-time speaker, Floyd Smith, for a fun titled presentation called That Giant Sucking Sound, How LLMs Are Taking Clicks Away from Content. I know, speaking personally, I very rarely click on links anymore. I will go to Google, I'll sometimes look at AI overviews, go to ChatGPT. I think the only time I click from Google is when I know something is out there and I need to get the URL. So Floyd's going to talk to us about the current landscape and maybe how marketers can get by in the current landscape when there's very few clicks coming from search. Floyd, thanks for joining, and take it away.
Great. I'm very glad to be here and glad to hear the interest in the topic. Just to frame this talk, this is like the tour that you take from a bus of San Francisco, where it gives you a sense of the layout of the land, and then you find out what's there, and then you dive into the part, the music scene or the art scene or the club scene or whatever you're into, you can do after the tour. But it's great, even if you're just into one scene, it's great to have a sense of the big picture and what's going on and what's the shared experience before we dive into our silos. So I'll defer any deep questions, even on areas that I know something about or have a strong opinions about, and in favor of giving the big picture. And I think there's only a very small number of people who really have a view of the big picture right now, and I've gotten to be one of them. So that's the purpose today. And next slide, please, Senator. All right, now just briefly stating my bona fides for this. SlidesGo helped me with a template, but the online functionality doesn't let you add or delete slides, so I had to abandon it and go to PowerPoint really quickly. I frame things as questions because at this stage, LLMs understand questions better than they understand answers as ways to organize information. And I tried to calm down my English because I lived in the UK for a while and I have all these funny expressions. So I tried to tone those down a bit. The titles are mine, but the text is hopefully standard English. Next slide, please. And this is about me. And just to sum it up in 2 sentences, I was lucky early in my career to understand that my core skill is taking complex topics and explaining them to a wide range of audience, everyone from developers to the general public. I did that with creating web pages for dummies a long time ago. I did it with quantum computing for dummies a short time ago. And now I feel I have that broad grasp on this topic. So I'm doing it for this new complex system that's being both created and the old ones being revolutionized. And there's some details there. Do please reach out to me on LinkedIn and connect. I'll follow up on LinkedIn shortly after. Next slide, please.
I don't know why it says what's being intended to be can't lose.
I'm sorry? Okay, that might not have been intended for us. And as far as who you guys are, please feel free to share your LinkedIn in the chat so that myself and other people can reach out to you, connect with me on LinkedIn. And there will be a recording. And Dennis is awesome at getting that up on the YouTube playlist, his YouTube playlist for this group a few days after the presentation. And the link is here. And so there'll be a recording, and I'm happy to share my slides. Just request them on LinkedIn, and I'll send them to you. Next slide, please. Okay, the summary of what I'm going to cover is that clicks from SEO are dropping. That's the urgent thing for a lot of us content marketers. And as people were sharing, many people are not really searching anymore. They're prompting, and the prompt might imply a search. Then even if you do use Google, you'll get an AI overview first for most queries now. And that, I don't know, that may become 100% over time. I just don't know. And then something that interacts with this that people don't understand how they work together is that LLMs make content creation easier. So a lot of people who were frozen out because they didn't know what the heck they were doing when it came to content creation, and would have to hire people like a lot of us in the group in order to get themselves expressed online. They can do it themselves now. If you use an LLM and edit the content carefully, you can get pretty close to human content. But it's too easy to create content with an LLM and just publish it, unfixed up. So there's just a flood of crap out there, in addition to good stuff that's still being published. Now, whether that good stuff will still be getting published is in question, because there's a drop in page views of up to 50%. Just in the last 3 years. The results have some difficulties that I'll point out, and some good value that I'll also point out. A couple of little oddities that I picked up on in doing some deep research. The first is, if you search for a Ford convertible, you're going to get a pretty good answer. And I think the reason is that most of the LLMs will kick in their live search on a branded query, and they'll draw on information differently. Whereas if you put in best convertible, my experience was I got really crappy answers. It told me what the best convertible was based on reasoning that it did not share with me. And it was probably like from a Reddit comment one person made, saying that this Mustang of this year is the best convertible. And there's no attestation as to how that was reached or anything. So a lot of us who are working with brands, our work will really suffer because the LLMs will not represent us fairly. Next slide, please. Sorry. There we go. Yeah, this one. And then there's model results versus live results. And that's so complicated. I'll show it to you as an example instead of explaining it to you. And then this is a snapshot of probably the biggest initial impact of the tidal wave. The initial wave of the tidal wave has hit, but it's still sucking out to sea. They're still figuring out the damage, and things are still changing. And then how users incorporate this in their lives is changing. Like when Facebook first came in, everyone was on it. Now it's a small part, of our social media landscape. And then this really scary thing is that the economic justification for publishing on the web may erode to the point where enough publications go out of business and enough marginal pressure on the value of a web page, we may lose. The web will be smaller as a result of the operation of LLMs. And then it'll be the quality content will be smaller because the economic justification isn't there. And the easy, cheap to produce stuff will expand. So the web may actually really degrade in quality in the next several years just because of economic pressure. Next slide, please. Okay, so let's go into some detail on this. That's the summary. But what is it that LLMs have done to the web? Next slide, please. Okay, so how does an LLM work? An LLM, very few people understand how this works. Maybe most of you guys do because it's special in this audience, but most people out there do not get it. So each website, it's not even a cut of beef. It's like a finished filet mignon or swordfish steak or sushi selection from an expert chef. Every website is really curated carefully for its target audience for the most part. Not every, sorry, most websites. They basically have a lot of money put into them and there's a lot of value got back out of the website. So each of these pieces of meat is not just random, it's actually for a certain purpose. The LLM takes a lot of that content, most of the web, puts it through a meat grinder, and you see that hamburger down there in the lower right? That's the model. So it uses all of this information to create a syntactic model of linked parts of words. So then when we enter a prompt in an LLM, the prompt suggests some token, which is like 4 characters, to the LLM, and it takes those and processes them, and then starts its answer by picking a token or 2 or 3 for the start of your answer, and then it uses a token-to-token association to build out the rest of the answer. So it's a statistical process. And it's amazing that it works as well as it does because it works pretty well and it often seems kind of intelligent, but it's really a kind of dumb assembly process The reason it works is that the original content that was out there on the web had a lot of smarts in it. So if you reassemble things using some rules out of those pieces, you can end up with some pretty smart sounding answers. But the smarts come from people. This is just a machine. Then I will just add that once you get that pound of ground beef down there in the lower right, that stays the same for a year or two, because it takes billions of dollars to do this meat grinder on the whole web. Very expensive. DeepSeek did it cheaper, but they cut some corners. So it's a very expensive process. So that thing sits there. So when you enter a query against it, as I'll show you in some results, it's getting old results. Sometimes those results are improved with live updates, and I'll show about that. I'll show something about that too. And go ahead for the next slide, please. Okay, so, and talking a little bit more about the impact, news sites are hit hardest. Most of you guys know this, so I'm not going to go into depth about it, but it's good reference if you're new to the topic. And next slide, please. And of course, business sites are hit too. And a lot of times, a lot of business sites keep their views, and activity to themselves because it's business specific information. But it's almost as bad as for news sites. And a lot of us on the inside with different brands are seeing that. And a lot of companies are following a very natural emotional reaction at this moment, is they're cutting back their spending on marketing. That is penny wise and pound foolish. You actually, the smart brands at this point, of which there are a few, are increasing their spending on marketing, because what they really should be doing is they should be continuing the old paradigm until they've wrung every last drop out of that sponge that they possibly can, and figuring out and starting the new paradigm. So when you're having a shift from the old to the new and they're overlapping, you've got to continue the old until it really goes. And then you've got to start on the new, and you don't know what you're doing. You're learning, right? So that means extra spending. So if you find a company that is spending more on marketing and actively working to figure this stuff out, that's where you want to be, and even who you want to buy from. The companies that are just, bringing in their tentacles and saying, oh, we can generate a bunch of cheap content for free, do the old thing cheaper, and not worry about the new thing. Yeah, that's not going to work out for them. But it feels good to them in the short run. Next slide, please. I'm ready for the next slide. Oh, thank you. Okay, so I'm going to show some examples now of what this looks like in real life. Little, snippets of our daily experience on the web, as Dennis was referring to before I started talking. Next slide, please. And there are, I think, 4 of these slides that show different aspects. So here's the old pre-LLM Google search with no AI overview, which just happened to come up this way. I'll see how that prompt that I made, that query I made. I'd like to make reservations for a Thai restaurant in Dogpatch. It knows me well enough to know that Dogpatch to me is part of San Francisco, that's near Chase Center, where the Warriors play, about 10 miles away from me. But it did something really dumb. It highlighted Kin Cow in Dogpatch, but it highlighted a restaurant that's permanently closed. So it was clever, but not smart, if you see what I mean. It's putting my eyes' attention on something I can't make a reservation at. And if you think through, in the old world, I would have clicked through some of these links, both the sponsored link, which means some value is being created and changing hands. I would have also looked at Yelp for contrast. And then I would have looked at some of the results to see if I could get a clue as to what to click on that might fit my budget. I asked for a reservation on Thursday night. I entered the query on Tuesday, so I got to be clever, because the best restaurant is probably going to be fully reserved during the busy hours. So I'm actually looking for a pretty good restaurant, or maybe I have to go early. So, these things are complicated. So this is the old world, with some dumbness in it too, but you can see the value. Like, I would probably spend longer and be more frustrated by this page than an LLM, but I would at the end of the process have learned more. So basically with SEO, old style SEO, you can do fewer, a user can do fewer searches, but they may get more value out of each search when they're done with a frustrating process. Next slide. Oh, Sean, thank you for bringing that up. So Sean brought up in the chat, our perspective is content creators who want to get links to our content. I'll circle around back
Floyd, are
to
you
that.
going to address that, or are we going to get like a loose big picture for another 30 minutes? Because I think everybody knows this stuff you're showing right now. I'm sorry to be so direct, but you're talking to a specialty audience.
Yeah, I appreciate the directness. So I'll go through the big picture quickly, but my experience has been that even a lot of creators, most creators don't understand some of the specifics that make a difference in that question. So let me do this pretty quickly and then go to that bigger picture question. Thanks for the feedback and thanks for being straight out. All of our time is limited and it's valuable, as comes up here. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so this is an unbranded search, and a lot of people don't realize that when you enter a search from within a model, you're getting the old hamburger. So look how this answer from the current ChatGPT model doesn't include the fact that this restaurant is closed. This happens a lot. So you're frantically updating your site for the new world. That work does not show up in the model until the next time it's updated. And then, you know, it's periodic updates every year or so. So it's a very frustrating process for us content creators. Next slide, please.
Sorry, let me get back to the share.
Okay.
Oh God, hold on.
That's okay. Part of the reason I asked Dennis to do the slides is I didn't want to get stuck like that while I was also allocating brain cells to speaking. Right, and then the one after that.
Ah. Okay, here we go. This one?
No, one up.
So
Okay,
one
there
past
we
it?
go.
Okay,
No,
this
no,
one.
that one, yes. Okay, so this is branded search. When I asked, to my earlier point, when I asked for a specific restaurant name, it used live search, even though it's the same model, it used live search to update the result to current reality. So that's the difference in how people search, and people don't understand that difference. Next slide, please. Okay, so here are the results of that. And I'll explain the joke in LinkedIn later so that we can go through this quickly. But what's the impact and what should companies do? So go ahead and go to the next slide. Okay, so the winners, the LLM companies have succeeded in getting traction and changing users' habits. That's huge. There'll be a lot of value for them. People like us who become experts in this area, you know, and that's where I ask you guys to use a broad net when you learn about this, because if you go straight to your immediate problem, you're going to miss some of the stuff on the sides that's important to really understanding it and coming up with creative answers. Companies, teams, and marketers that embrace the new will win, and some users will get better information than they did before. Losers, you know, traditional SEO. Google is on playing both sides of this, right? They're losing value from SEO, but they're gaining value from their AI overview. And who knows if they end up ahead or behind. If you stay in the old world, if you stay SEO focused, that's going to hurt you. And then if you don't go into the new world, and then most website owners are going to lose value of the website itself. And then it's quite possible that the web itself will lose, that the web will become less valuable, less useful, including less useful to the LLM makers. Next slide, please. Okay, and so what should we do? So this is the part where we get to your question. But let me answer the question directly, and I should have done that in the slides, but the reasons what I'm about to say is true are in the slides. Content creation by itself and publishing the way we used to is not going to get the results that it used to. And this is going to drive CEOs nuts because CEOs really index on SEO. And the reason is it's measurable and understandable. And we try to tell them about events, and we try to tell them about brand, we try to tell them about this, and they obsess about SEO. SEO is not coming back. There's no way to get from the new world just what we got from the old world. So you might say that the new stuff is weird, but it's not actually the new stuff that's weird. SEO was actually weird. The last 20 years were unusual. The saying in marketing for centuries, I mean, literally centuries, has been, I'm wasting half the money I spend on advertising and I don't know which half. For 20 years, we knew more about where we were spending our money and what value we were getting from it. We had trackability to an extent that we never had before, that we're losing. And I don't know, how, when or how we would ever get that same again. So we adapted over 2 decades to a very specialized information ecosystem that's been largely blown up. That's the current situation. So your CEO, and I've had this happen, is going to come to you saying, how do I get those clicks back? And telling them that you can't is a tremendously frustrating answer. There's a question here that I'll take a moment to answer and go back to the big picture. Thanks, Andy, for the connection. Is Google's EEAT also applicable to AIO, GEO, or is it predominantly for SEO? The answer to your question is yes. You should keep doing the old stuff because GEO rests on top of SEO. It's like a pyramid, right? There's SEO, you still need to do all of that. And then GEO has some specialized features to it. And then there's what happens to the user. Either they click or they form it, which is SEO, or they form a new impression in their head, which is GEO. So keep doing everything you're doing, but you have to do more also. You have to do twice as much. And you actually get, after you do twice as much, you get less measurable results. Because the new battleground is in the mind of the user. Dennis was saying he hardly uses SEO anymore. He gets answers through prompts. And where does that information go? It goes into Dennis's head, and we can't measure what's in Dennis's head. We can't measure what's in any user's head, right? We can only see what they do. And we are losing the ability to carefully track what they do. We can't track people down through funnel stages like we used to. I've made great advantage of that. I've actually changed the marketing focus of a pretty decent sized startup because of information from that process. I wouldn't be able to do that the same way today. So let me go through the specific points. Quick fixes for GEO. The blog is less valuable than it used to be because a lot of blog posts are SEO focused. So the LLMs are kind of like techies who don't like marketing. They tend to avoid marketing. So they will go to the about page on your website. They really like your documentation. Again, LLMs are created by engineers and they treat marketing the same way engineers treat marketing. They go for facts, not for what they call fluff, even if the fluff is stuff we think is important. A trick that works right now that may not work in the future is to rephrase content titles as questions, or something that I think is actually worth doing. Take all your existing blog posts, add a few questions at the end, FAQ type questions at the end as a summary. Answer the questions there. The LLMs will like that. The users will like that because they're getting used to this call and response style that LLMs encourage, right? User behavior changes. And it also gets us thinking in an LLM type of way on top of the SEO type of way. And then here's what really drives people like us nuts as content marketers. The LLMs tend to look off-site. Those of you who have been around for a long time might remember that the original magic of Google was it looked at page rank. Google values a page, Google SEO values a page depending on who else links to it. Well, the LLMs take that to another level. So they don't value what you say about yourself on your website. They give some value to your documentation. They give a lot of value to what people say about you on Reddit, on Quora. If your business has relevant discussion boards, they'll be there. They'll look there. They look at reviews, especially high prestige reviews like Tech Magazine, Substack and Medium stuff. So a lot of stuff that we marketers would dismiss as random, one-off, impressionistic, underinformed, on and on and on, all of these complaints we would have is really rated very highly by the LLM as content. So then what are some slower fixes for this? And again, you have to do all this stuff and you're not going to get back the trackability you had before. So we really are in a new world and a harder one. You have to get your engineers to publish in different social media, to have a Substack and so on. That means that you usually don't get to review their content before it goes out. So it might be wrong. It might be off your positioning. It might start a fight with another brand that you do not want to get into. All of these things, I believe, have to mostly accept that. We have to plant 1,000 seeds, let 1,000 flowers bloom, and then some of those flowers will be flowers we don't like. Most of them, though, will do us a lot of good in terms of credibility with other people as human beings who see it, the stuff where it shows up, and the LLMs will value it as well. There are business implications. If your product or service is not the best for some well-defined group of people in ways that you can prove with case studies and customer quotes and G2 reviews and so on, it's now very difficult. It's harder to specialize because we were using keywords to help us find niches that worked for our company. That could be geographical, it could be price, whatever. The LLMs paint with a broad brush. So they just say the best convertible is a Ford, So, well, no, but that's what the LLM will say. So if you are Ford and you have that model of convertible, then you're happy because all the convertible buyers are being told to call you or to go to your showroom. And if you have a foreign convertible that's great for sports car enthusiasts, you might not even show up in the results. Like nobody's going to hear about you through the LLM. So it's much cruder than the fine tuning. We were doing rifle shots with SEO and we're back to shotgun blast. And that implies also, I can't prove this, so I didn't put it on the slides, but something for you guys to consider is that things like advertising, showing up in public events, viral marketing, and social media channels like Instagram and so on that we content marketers tend to really not like are right now, they're very important. They're very important to LLMs and they're very important beyond LLMs. So we have to get into people's minds. We won't be able to track the results so that they love us or are very interested in our product. So when they go to buy, they remember what to do because SEO is not going to bring them back to us. And then just to make a few more points, and then I can open up to questions. I would recommend that if you have influence on this, that you look to hire a consultant in the short term. And the rubric, you should also become an expert, but become an expert by working with the consultant. The basic idea is if a company or an individual is only going to do something once, it's better to hire it out because you're not going to be very good at it doing it your first time. If it's my first time and it's the consultant's 100th time, they're going to do it a lot better than I would. And my job is to take the consultant's approach, which will tend to be somewhat broad brush, and forcing, in a positive way, forcing the consultant to do better than their usual work and make their work specific to my company and my situation, right? So hire a consultant and then ride them real hard in a positive way so that your company becomes like a case study for them, that you're a stellar result, that everyone at your company says great things about that consultant. I've listed a few here, but please don't use this list and not look at anything else. Kind of the opposite. Use your networking, talk to people you know. Probably in those results, you'll run into Profound because I've been hearing that they kind of started this kind of tool, and that so Peak is basically positioning themselves, I believe, as a lower price version of Profound that maybe help you out a bit more. I found the right Sonic site, which is doing some good comparative marketing using SEO, you know, to get clicks. And then Rampic is a company that I know well and like and have done some work with. And they are more, it's more consultancy that has a product rather than a product that comes with consulting. Go ahead and go to the next slide, Dennis. I'm almost done and I'll take questions. Okay, and there we go. Ideas for you. And this is educate yourself. So coming here, please do take the time to understand the big picture before you dive into the current crisis, because the current crisis will shift with time. Talk to people, as you did with that good question for me. Use the tech, push yourself, and I'll be asking for other ideas. And then over time, become an expert, which is something I'm working to do. Migrate toward companies and teams that are proactive about this stuff. Learn how other parts of marketing work that maybe we could ignore up till now. And then big brands will tend to win in the short term, and look for other ideas as well. And please reach out to me on LinkedIn. So I'm ready for questions. So the presentation was 36 minutes, and we have, well, we'll go until we run out of questions. So please fire away.
I'll start with one, Floyd. The on your GEO slow fixes, I think you said focus on NPS, Net Promoter Score. What is the connection? Why do you think a higher NPS is good for GEO?
Thank you very much for asking that question. So Net Promoter Score, as you'll remember, is there's a 10-point scale, and you ask your customers how they would rate you. And I believe that it's a 9 or a 10 is a positive for you. Everything in the middle it counts as 0, and then any negative scores like 1 or 2 or 3 are counted heavily against you. And the idea is that the best marketing, even during the SEO era, the best marketing, I believe, is almost always word of mouth marketing. NPS is a way to try to measure word of mouth. If Dennis loves my stuff to death, then he's going to give me that high score, and my NPS score will be high. And also, if somebody asks him for a content marketer, he'll be saying good things about me in my specialty areas. The same is true for every product and for every company. You really want to achieve excellence. If you have churn, either as a professional or as a product, in other words, if people sample what you're offering and they don't like it, thank you, Dennis, but could you go back to the last slide? That's probably a good home base for the Q&A. Thank you. If you or your product or your company have a low Net Promoter Score, that means that you're not going to be viral. You know, people are not going to say good things and good things and good things in a widening circle. So concentrating on the user or customer experience is going to help you. And then people will say great things on Reddit and on Quora and in published reviews, and you'll get included in the published review because, like I just did, you know, I showed a list of products, right? And it's what I've heard of. So these people are getting early good Net Promoter Scores. Yeah, they're getting good word of mouth. So that's the process that we have to tap into.
Got it. Any questions? Feel free to come off mute to ask your question or put it in the chat.
I've come off mute, Dennis. Just formulating a question here. First of all, thank you, Floyd, for presenting. I appreciate that. We're an open, supportive community of marketers of all levels and abilities. So I encourage those who found this to be too entry level to self-select and opt for another meeting. So that person left. So the question I have for you is around some recent news that I saw. I'm looking for the link right here on. So if you're familiar with an SEO pundit, longtime expert, Alita Solis, maybe I'm mispronouncing her name. She published a significant research on July 24th that confirmed that, as it turns out, ChatGPT uses Google SERP snippets for its answers. And she has some data and tests and proof here. So comment and then question to you, Floyd. Is this something, do you think is prevalent? How might we react to that as content marketers if indeed ChatGPT is just serving answers based on grabbing Google SERP snippets? And I'll drop a link here too for people.
Thank you. No, that's great. And if you could type the name of the person in the chat, because I thought you said an elitist solipsist.
Oh no, I'm sorry. Yeah, let me. I might be mispronouncing her. Aleda. There's a link.
I'm sure I would too.
There's a link in the chat, and if anyone else wants to chime in,
yes.
And here's the why. We're collaborating at the company here on, hey, we need to optimize our content for LLMs. My cynical or skepticism is I think that just means doubling down on known SEO tactics that work. But anyhow, there's a link there.
That's great. I agree with you that right now, doubling down on known SEO tactics is a pretty good response to geo. I do agree with that. Like, you're going to be right more often than any other strategy you might try by doing that. But that implies, as you're saying, that implies more time, energy, and focus. And since you're losing the click trackability, you're asking your company, the employees, to trust you that that's the right thing to do. Because we can't prove things the same way anymore. So yes.
Well, and Floyd, I'm just looking at the chat. Credit to Frank, a member in the chat, where he asked the question: is Google's EAT also applicable to GEO? And so yes, an emphatic yes. Right. Okay. Yeah. Good.
Yeah.
Thanks for your presentation today.
Oh yes, you're very welcome. The other two cautions. The first is that you won't be able to track it. So we all gotta spread a wide net and learn as much as we can. And then we have to get people to trust us where we used to have data. And then the final thing is that everything's changing. So I personally think there will be fewer LLMs in 2 years than there are now, that there will be some contraction. I don't think it will be a disaster because there's real value in these things. But I think there will be some degree of contraction, mergers and acquisitions, and changing tactics. And the best tactics will rise to the top. But they're seeing data. The LLMs are seeing data that we're not. And they're making decisions in their business interests based on that data. And we just kind of have to wait and see what they actually do, which is frustrating as hell. But it's unfortunately the situation.
Makes sense.
Floyd, I got a question.
Yes.
First of all, great presentation. I love the
you.
kind of the baseline, but also a lot of really good information, a lot of good nuggets here. I have a question regarding the blog. Now, how do you optimize that specifically? You have a website. Let's say you have the same format Q&A in your website. How does that translate it? Because I'll give you an example. I typed in a question on Google, and it had a generative output. And then one of the reference points was really a link to like a third or fourth page of the Google search. And then I asked Google, why did you pick that? I mean, it was not a known authority, but somehow it pulled it. I started scratching my head, like how? And so if you can provide any high level kind of even guesstimate on the logic of that, that'd be great.
Yes, I'll tell you what I know. If you think of a bunch of child's alphabet blocks spread out on the floor, the magic of the LLM is that it knows for certain situations, if you take one alphabet block, what's the next alphabet block that goes with it, and the next alphabet block that goes with that, and it forms that into an answer. The people who created ChatGPT, when ChatGPT got famous about 3 years ago now, they were amazed that suddenly their stuff went from not working very well to suddenly being pretty darn useful. It turns out that with some fine tuning, that very simplistic process I just described yields some pretty good and pretty human sounding answers. And now they're fine tuning on top of that. So when you ask an LLM something, it absolutely cannot go to first principles and then adapt its understood truth to your answer. It doesn't understand any truths except don't be racist, don't cuss, the only truths it understands are negative, things not to do. Don't draw world leaders as Nazis, stuff like that. Those are all in there where it will look at the answer it comes up with and it'll remove stuff based on those rules. But the actual original answer is generated through a process of association of 4-letter long tokens. So it's kind of crazy that that is working so well and becomes so important. So the answer you get from an LLM is not really an answer from the LLM. It's what the LLM can find out there that seems to resemble an answer to your question. So the content comes from the web, not from the guts of that LLM. And for something, just to quickly finish up, but ChatGPT has been written about a lot. So basically, if you ask ChatGPT what it's doing, it's going to look at everything that's been written about ChatGPT and extract an answer from what was written about ChatGPT. No core knowledge from the people who create ChatGPT will be in your answer. Expressly not. It's like a super web search, and then some very creative rules used in combining the pieces of the answer into a response to you.
Okay, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
I have just a comment. Thanks, Floyd. This was really great. I'm a professor. I teach marketing in an MBA program, and one of the easiest ways to help my students understand marketing concepts is to have them put themselves in the shoes of the consumer. And I think that is a great way to think about this as well. So if we think about the way that we use LLMs as consumers of those products, I think it can help us understand how the content that we're creating as marketers, will show up and how it can, be rendered in those different platforms. So I think that kind of dual brain of, we get so stuck in our marketing space, and putting ourselves on the flip side of the coin can certainly help that. I think you did some of that today. So thank you very much.
Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome. I'll thank you for sharing your LinkedIn, and I'll reach out after the presentation.
So Floyd, I have a question. So I was talking about some of my current usage patterns, and I'm a ChatGPT user. When I do an information prompt, I just want some basic facts. So I scope the answer, because I think LLMs can be as verbose as you want, and sometimes I don't want to have to read through that. So I say, give me 1 paragraph on, or 2 paragraphs on. And then the places where I'll click is when it cites the link, because if it's just giving me a paragraph, I prefer to go to the actual source and read more about it. So have you found ways for LLMs to better surface your brand's website links in the answers?
Yes, I've actually done a fair amount of work on that. And so some of the tips that I shared are part of that. And then a company that I'm working with happened to be revamping their website in early this year. And they published the website early this year. And then we got a consultant in to help us with the problems that I'm talking about, which is where I learned a lot of what I've been sharing. And we found that revamp happened to help us a lot with LLMs, in that there were a lot more terms that have AI overviews. But what we found is that if we put out a page saying our product is famous for A, and it also does B and C, what happened for our product is that we would show up if people asked about A, right? Like convertible. But if we said you can also use it as a boat or a bathtub, in your spare time, it would not show up as a boat or a bathtub. That we would have to take and put up a whole page about using our sports car as a boat, And we would have to get that in reviews and mentioned and have users talk about it. And that's what would make it show up as a damn boat. And then for the bathtub, the same darn thing. Or you can say, okay, we're going to stop marketing as a boat or bathtub, and we're just going to go for the whole sports car thing because that's working for us. But it's forcing tough decisions like that. Whereas in the SEO world, you could get some boat links going, and you could bring in the boat fanatic users, even sports car as a boat users, right? I mean, this is a ridiculous example, but some of the stuff we've done, we've really beaten on the capabilities of SEO to help us get users in pretty small niches. And so either you have to either go big on your core, or you have to make your ancillary functionality pretty big as well, and get people talk about it on Reddit, and people talk about it, and has an Instagram channel of everyone who has their sports car that they use as a bathtub, and so you probably do fewer things with greater emphasis per thing you do.
Got it. Thank you. We still have some more time. Anyone have questions, additional questions?
Hi, I actually have a question over here.
Go for it.
Hi. Yeah, so actually this is my first time joining this meetup group, and so I'm actually very excited to hear this talk. Is very insightful. So I have a quick question over here. We were talking about like LLMs and talking about like using LLM to generating results as the consumer. Like for example, I'm doing a search over here. I just asked like what is the best A or B product that I can find in the world right now on the Google AI search. What I've been given is actually a bunch of text without the links actually from the LLM itself. So that I assume are the embedded information or the information being used to train the LLM previously. Whereas right now you can also, like if you enable the search mode, you can let the LLM to search on the content online right now and give you the answer. My question is for a consumer, which type of result do they generally have like more trust in? And if I want to optimize for the first kind of LLM results, as in like the pre-trained data, like are there any ways to do that? Thank you.
Yes. We don't know yet what they trust more, but the early returns seem to be that they trust the model, that they trust the answers they get a lot. And part of what I wanted to include in the presentation is showing that some of the results aren't really worth that confidence. You know, if you're in a fast changing area and you're getting model results off of 1 and 2 year old models, you're not going to get a good answer, but people tend to trust it. You know, if I followed some of my search results, I would have gone to that restaurant that's closed. So, you know, that's what's happening. So the SEO world has made us pretty fast twitch, because you have to process a lot of information to get a good answer out of SEO. So we've burned through that info using SEO, you know, before LLMs really fast. So now we're following the same approach, and we think that the models are giving us a good answer. So I think that users are trusting to answer your question, my belief is that users are trusting the first thing that looks like an answer that they get, whether it's good or not. And it's mostly people like us who are make considered decisions, who are looking for the source or looking for attribution, or maybe trying to disprove the initial answer. You know, a percentage will do that, but man, there are a lot of people out there who are busy, and they'll say something out loud and they'll get a response, and that's what they'll go do, or that's what they'll act on, or that's what they'll buy. And it can be a lot of holes in that piece of Swiss cheese out of the model.
Yeah. So if that's the case, then wouldn't it be really hard to do GEOs? Because the first kind of search results are being like I believe the last ChatGPT like 4.0 model was being using the data like on 2023 and before. So if a company is created after 2023, you can't get the result being shown in the AI response unless you're using search mode, right? So like there seems to be no way to work around this if you're a new company. Like, what's your opinion on this?
Yeah. So there's a lot of truth in what you just suggested, right? You are pretty well, you're in a world of hurt if you do something important and new between model updates. There are increasingly live updates being applied to model results, but it's hit and miss. Like I showed you, I showed two very similar queries worded slightly differently, and one went off the old model that you just mentioned, and one included a live check. And it's almost like putting the words in a different order caused that change. And the consumer doesn't know what they're getting, and they don't have the infrastructure to think it through. So yes, and that then adds to what I was sharing before. It's always been said that SEO takes some years to build up. Your domain authority, Google really recognizing you, getting backlinks to your site took a couple years. Now we add to those lags up to 2 years, say, between model updates. So it's more of the same in terms of taking time. And that means that in the short term for a new company, you build the infrastructure so that you'll show up in SEO and geo over time today, but you won't get the benefit of that right away. So you better have a pop-up booth at the convention, and you better have the Goodyear blimp going overhead, and you better have somebody who's well-known say something good about you on Reddit, right? All the other kinds of marketing have to be used in the short term until the longer term stuff can catch up.
Thank you so much. Appreciate that.
All right, Flo, we got a question from Tino in the chat. I'll read it aloud. How would one rank on Perplexity, which provides source URLs, especially as a new company with disruptive and economically advantageous business model? It seems a lot harder, easier to get surfaced on the web.
So Perplexity is really a favorite among people like us, but people like us are a tiny minority of people out there. I'd be surprised if 5% of all searches went through Perplexity, particularly. We all love Perplexity because we love the attribution. We're content creators, so we can see where our work shows up or doesn't. It's a lot easier to optimize for. So maybe a good early strategy would be to optimize for Perplexity, because you can see the results of what you do, and then once you get to where you're showing up on Perplexity, look at the other LLMs and see what it takes to show up on them as well. So you're not going to Perplexity first because it's the biggest. You're going to it first because it gives you the most feedback about the results of your hard work. So yeah, really good question. And yes, your new company, that's just it. It's going to take even longer and be even harder to get to show up on the web as before. I'll share an example from my experience. I was working in a niche with 6 major products. A question about the best, tell me something about this kind of product. Only 3 of those companies showed up in the answers. The other 3 disappeared. Like, they do not exist as far as LLM results are concerned. And luckily, the company I was working for was one of the 3. But there was another company not much smaller than us that missed the cutoff and did not show up. So new guys, new companies, new products, new ideas really take some time and have a tough sledding before they get recognized in these. I'll share one more example of something I'm doing. We're doing something in quantum computing relating to finance. So I'm actually inventing the term QFI to describe this segment. And we're going to be trying to popularize this term, not as a trademark term, but as a broad banner, so that people will search on QFI and then see us because we invented the term. Perplexity has 6.2% share. 5% was a pretty good guess. Thank you, Rich.
But I've never heard of that source, so yeah, who knows? But there you go.
Right,
anyway,
right.
Will you spell what you just said? Did you say QFI, like quantum?
Oh, Q. Yeah, the letters, the 3 letters, QFI. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, quantitative computing finance is the original, and so yes, so QFI, And I'm actually inventing this and unleashing it on the world in order to work around the problem that you brought up, Frank. To partially work around the problem you brought up.
Tino, you have a comment or question? Yep, go ahead.
Yeah, would counter-positioning be a tactic that, because we're naturally differentiated, right, by our business model. So is counter-positioning and writing about our counter-position tactic or strategy?
Oh my, I'm embarrassed because I should have thought of what you just said. Yes, to answer your question, yes. Naming your opposition, thanks for naming your opposition in ways that your leadership of your company will be uncomfortable with and taking them on. And don't slander them or anything, of course. There are lawyers who have nothing to do, who will make themselves known to you. But yes, direct comparison. Our user got a better result with us than the name brand. Yes, that is actually a great short-term fix. I'm going to add it to my slides if I give this presentation again. Thank you so much for bringing it up just within our hour. So yes, that is a great quick fix. Name your opposition and why you're better, who you're better for, how you're better. Be friendly and positive in tone. Don't make their users look stupid. But definitely name and compare, not name and shame, but name and compare for sure. Thanks for bringing that up. I appreciate it.
So one more question. So without naming specific companies, because we're actually a substitute for the entire value chain as it exists now.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I would then name I would take the 3 best known companies in that value chain and say, many people have gotten a lot of value out of X. What we do is we include the functionality of X in a bigger product that also does what Y and Z do, right? And then I would write another blog post with Y at the top of the same argument, and then I would write another blog post with Z at the top of the same damn argument, right? Like repetition does not hurt you at all in this, or near repetition, in terms of solving Frank's problem and getting some early attention while you guys are being change agents.
And with that, I'm afraid we're out of time. Floyd, thanks so much for presenting to the group. One closing note is we are looking for more presenters as we head into the fall. So reach out to me or Rich if you would like, or our colleague would like to present to the group. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Okay.